Good evening, I'm Cynthia Ng. You are tuned in to AWANI International. Here are the top stories for tonight. Anwar says U.S. trade deal won't limit China ties. And Trump says asylum freeze to stay a long time. That and more coming up on AWANI International. Prime Minister Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim says Malaysia has assured Beijing that its new trade agreement with the United States will not hinder ongoing cooperation with China. His remarks follow reports that Chinese officials recently raised serious concerns about certain provisions in the agreement during discussions with Malaysian representatives.
Anwar confirmed that China had sought clarification on the pact and said Malaysia had provided it. He stressed that the issue should not be overstated and that China remained one of Malaysia's most important trading partners. He explained that in a bilateral meeting with Premier Lee Chiang, he made clear that the agreement did not limit Malaysia's collaboration with China, although he did not specify which meeting this referred to or the precise nature of China's concerns. The agreement was signed during President Donald Trump's visit to Malaysia last month. China has been Malaysia's largest trading partner for 15 consecutive years, with bilateral trade exceeding 450 billion ringgit in 2024.
United States President Donald Trump announced that his administration will maintain a long-term pause on asylum decisions. He said the U.S. should not admit people from certain countries, claiming individuals from those nations have caused harm. The remarks come after a recent shooting near the White House that killed one National Guard member and critically injured another. Authorities have identified the attacker as an Afghan national.
So you announced that asylum...
And that includes Somalians and includes plenty of others.
How long does your administration plan to pause asylum into the U.S.?
I think a long time.
Can you give any kind of time?
We don't want those people. We have enough problems. We don't want those people.
Is that a year, 2 years?
No time limit, but it could be a long time.
The pause applies to 19 countries already subject to U.S. travel restrictions since June, which includes Afghanistan, Cuba, Haiti, Iran, and Myanmar. The shooting on November 26 claimed the life of 20-year-old Sarah Backstorm and left another guardsman seriously wounded. Ramanullah Lakanwal had been part of a CIA-backed force fighting the Taliban in Afghanistan and entered the U.S. through a resettlement program after the 2021 American withdrawal. He was granted asylum in April 2025. Trump, however, has blamed his predecessor Joe Biden's administration for what he called lax vetting for Lakanwal's admission to the U.S.
Stay with us for more right after the break.
Daulat Tuanku.
Welcome back. United States President Donald Trump says a deal to end the war in Ukraine is becoming increasingly likely following a new round of discussions with Ukrainian officials in Florida. The discussions come as Ukraine faces mounting military pressure and a growing corruption scandal at home. The talks also set the stage for Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, to travel to Moscow on Tuesday for a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Washington has presented a plan aimed at ending the conflict and hopes to secure agreement from both Moscow and Kiev. Trump acknowledged that Ukraine is confronting serious internal challenges, including a corruption investigation that led President Volodymyr Zelensky to dismiss his chief of staff and chief negotiator. Even so, he said he is confident that a settlement was within reach. Oil prices climbed on Monday after OPEC Plus decided to keep production steady for the first quarter of 2026. The move comes amid expectations of a market surplus and ongoing geopolitical tensions involving Russia and Venezuela.
Following the announcement, Brent crude rose nearly 2% to $63.60 per barrel, reaching its highest level in over a week. OPEC Plus is slowing efforts to regain market share over concerns of a potential supply glut. The group, which produces about half the world's oil, has added roughly 2.9 million barrels per day since April 2025, while still maintaining 3.24 million barrels per day in output cuts, about 3% of global demand. The decision comes as the US pushes to broker peace between Russia and Ukraine, a move that could further affect global supply if sanctions on Moscow are eased.
United States President Donald Trump has confirmed that he recently spoke with Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. He described the call as routine, saying it was neither successful nor unsuccessful. This comes as Trump declared that Venezuela's airspace is now closed in its entirety, a comment that has sparked concern over whether Washington is preparing for a military move.
According to the New York Times, the call included discussion of a possible meeting in the United States. News of the exchange emerged as Trump continued his tough rhetoric towards Venezuela. On Saturday, he said Venezuelan airspace should be regarded as entirely closed, while offered no further explanation, adding to concern in Caracas as Washington increased pressure on Maduro's government. However, when asked whether his comments signaled the prospect of military action, Trump said it should not be interpreted in that way.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has rejected U.S. President Donald Trump's threat to exclude Pretoria from next year's G20 summit, saying South Africa remains a founding member of the group and cannot be excluded. Trump chose to boycott this year's summit, which was hosted in Johannesburg last week. He has accused the country of conducting what he calls a white genocide against white farmers and communities.
With no senior U.S. officials attending the summit, Ramaphosa ended a two-day meeting without performing the traditional handover of the G20 gavel. The United States is due to host the summit next year in Florida. Washington sent a last-minute representative from its embassy, but Trump later claimed Ramaphosa refused to hand the gavel to that official. Ramaphosa responded by saying the rotating presidency had, in fact, been transferred to a U.S. diplomat. He also rejected Trump's accusations of genocide against Afrikaners and claims of land seizures from white citizens, describing them as blatant misinformation.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi had long praised former Bangladesh PM Sheikh Hasina for ensuring security and stability on India's eastern border. Now, with Hasina in exile and convicted on multiple charges, the bilateral dynamic is shifting. Political scientist Dr. Mubashir Hassan of Western Sydney University calls it a new and uncertain phase in Bangladesh-India relations.
The relationship was mostly premised upon addressing India's security concern. Many in Bangladesh thought that the relationship was not balanced. It was heavily tilted towards India. And Sheikh Hasina is kind of perceived as working for India's interest more than Bangladesh's interest. And we saw many protesters were carrying that a placard and festoons which were written and indicating the Hasina being too much favorable towards Modi. Now, with Hasina's departure, we would see that there will be much more cold relationship between both states.
Bangladesh's interim government is demanding India to extradite Hasina, calling continued refuge a disregard for justice, pointing to competing pressures within India's security and foreign policy.
There is a strong lobby within India's security sector and India's foreign policy establishment that supports Sheikh Hasina. Nevertheless, there's a historic reasons behind that. Having said that, there are also establishment within Indian foreign policy and Indian security establishment that argues a more pragmatic approach. It will depend on eventually on the political leadership, like how India's Narendra Modi view it, but it is unlikely the way it is the way India is giving indicators. It is unlikely that Sheikh Hasina would be handed over to Bangladesh soon.
Despite the political turbulence, Mubashir says neither country can afford a breakdown in ties. Bangladesh is India's largest trading partner in South Asia, and security cooperation remains key along their border.
I would see continuity between in normal continuity of normal relationship between India and Bangladesh. I would not expect a like conflicting type of scenario between India and Bangladesh. The reason is both India and Bangladesh cannot afford it. Bangladesh would not be able to and should not be able to irritate India because a lot of things at the stake.
Former Bangladesh leader Sheikh Hasina's inner circle is facing new legal pressure in Bangladesh, and that now includes her niece, British MP Tulip Siddiq. A Dhaka court has sentenced Siddiq to 2 years in prison in a corruption case linked to the alleged illegal allocation of land. Hasina and her sister Sheikh Rehana, who were co-accused in the same case, received 5 and 7 years.
Bangladesh prosecutors said Hasina misused her power as Prime Minister, while Siddiq was guilty of corruptly influencing her aunt in helping her mother, Rehana, get a piece of land in a government project during Hasina's time in office. All three were tried in absentia. Tulip Siddiq, who resigned from the UK government in January after scrutiny of her financial links to Hasina, has rejected the allegations as politically motivated. Britain has no extradition treaty with Bangladesh. Hasina has been in India since fleeing an uprising in August last year. She was sentenced to death last month over a deadly crackdown on protesters and given a further 21 years in other corruption cases just last week.
Pope Leo has reaffirmed the Vatican's position that any lasting resolution to the Israel-Palestinian conflict must include a Palestinian state, calling it the only solution, despite Israel's continued opposition. Speaking to journalists on a flight from Turkey to Lebanon, the Pope said he hopes to act as a mediating voice between both sides.
The first U.S.-born pontiff told reporters that Israel still does not accept the idea of a Palestinian state, but said justice and peace can only be achieved through a two-state outcome. His remarks come as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu again rejects Palestinian statehood, even as Washington signals support for Palestinian independence. The Pope said he discussed both the Israel-Palestinian and Russia-Ukraine conflicts with Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan during his first overseas trip, noting that Ankara has an important role to play in efforts to pursue peace. The Pope's comments follow an earlier criticism of Israel's military campaign in Gaza, where he has condemned the humanitarian toll and spoken out against violence carried out in the name of religion.
That concludes AWANI International for tonight. Stay with us as we track the strategies and power shifts shaping the new global order. For more updates, visit international.astroawani.com and follow us on social media. I'm Cynthia Ng. Thank you for watching. Good night.